Alright, so the next thing that we need to do is set up our printing format for our invoices. So let's see how we can do that. So the first thing that we need to do is download the printing format for our invoices. So we go back to the downloads page of SXC Business Suite and we go to the additional useful links and files, and here we'll find a link to the page which contains the document formats. Now these document formats are obviously kind of standard formats which can be modified for our specific needs. So we can see there are various formats available, and a little detail is available on what the format has. So we can see the features which tells us what is different in this particular format vis-a-vis the rest of them. So we can see there are simple formats, kind of black and white, there are colored formats. So for example, here in this format on the top, the line itself has the tax details, whereas in this format GST2 the tax details have been clubbed at the bottom. So then we have some formats for retail and other needs. So for our purposes, let us choose a format which is simple. So let's take this format which is GST1B. So we can download it. And let's see what this contains. So we'll move this into our SXCBS folder, and since this is a compressed file, we'll extract it. And what we have is a couple of files over here. Now there is a preview which tells us how this looks like. That's okay. Then we have this RPT format, which is the basic format we're going to set. Then we also have this PDF. So we can also have a look at the whole format before we start using it. So if it's suitable, we can proceed with importing it or using it in our system. So there are a couple of steps involved here. Number one, we need to update our backend code for this format. So you will find a file with SQL script in it. So the extension of it will be SQL. Now here you cannot see it. So if we want to see the extension of this file, what we can do is go to our control panel, folder options, in this folder options we go to view and say that we don't want to hide the extensions for known type files, which means we want to see them. So now you can see this is a SQL file. So what we can do is click on it and it will open it in the SQL server that we installed earlier. Now if you have not yet opened SQL Server Management Studio, then you will come across the screen, and for the first use it will take a few minutes to start. Now you will have to log in using either of the ways. You can use Windows authentication or you can use SQL Server authentication, and you can use the password that you used while installing this. On this window here, I'll just remove the pins for the properties, and I'll also remove the pin over here. Now what is important to do is, on the top we have to select the database which we want this format to be available. So we are going to use the training database, that is what we are working on, and then we just have to press this execute button, and you should get a message saying that it has been done successfully. So the second step now is to actually set this invoice format in the application. So what we'll do is go to our application, go to print formats, and on this screen the first thing that we'll have to do is specify for which transaction we want to specify the format. So we'll go into sales management and sales invoice header. Since for the sales invoice we want to set this format, we are going to click this thing. Now we can set a format for all the users in a system, or you can set a format for a specific user. This might be useful if, for example, a particular user in your company is handling export sales and his format for invoicing is different from the rest of the users who are invoicing for domestic customers. So then in that case you can specify a different format for a particular user. Then you can also have different formats set for a particular customer. So if a customer says that this is a special format that we've agreed upon, and this has to be used every time you generate an invoice for me, then you can do that as well without affecting the generic format that you have for rest of your customers. So right now we'll leave it for all business partners and all users. Now what we'll have to see is that the printing formats list does not contain a format right now. So we'll say add new, and we'll type in a report ID or the name of the print format. So we can say, let's say Nova default invoice. Okay, so this is just a name, and it will create a record for the new print format that we want to set. So now what we can do is click on it and say change, because now we want to specify where the actual report file is for this particular format. So we'll go where we have downloaded and extracted this format. This RPT file contains the format basically. We'll say open, and we'll also have to click this update button, which will set this format for us. Once this is done, then we can use this format for our invoicing.